So welcome to everybody that's joining us this morning from various parts of Canada. Certainly Ontario, the Northwest Territories here in BC is represented. I'm Dawn Benson, and I'll be the moderator of our school health webinar this morning. And we have our presenter speaking to us from Vancouver, and he'll join us in just a minute. I want to let you all know that we're recording the session this morning, and so folks who have signed up for it, some of them will want to access it at a different time, and as well you will be sent a link to the recording so you could use it for other groups as well. You'll see that if you look on our front board, we've had people practicing putting their names on the front board by using the tools at the side. And we hope to use the tools at the side once or twice throughout this morning, and for some of you it's this afternoon. As well, because our interaction is not through the telephone conference line as it was other years, it's through the computer, we'll be asking you to send any questions that you might have or comments that you might have through the chat line, which is the box below the participants. So, we're hoping that you will see this as interactive as well as a way for you to gain a lot of information. So our presenter this morning is Art Steinman, and he's going to present on a program that is being used in the Vancouver School Board and certainly is being evaluated as well. And we were hoping that we would hear from him how things were going with that evaluation, but he said that it's been written. It's not yet been published, but as soon as it is, we will make sure that we get that link sent to folks so that they can certainly know that this is a program, whether or not they would want to look at it in their own area. I have heard Art present on this program, so I'm really quite excited about this. And we have a wealth of information to send to you afterwards through a wiki site. Just a little bit of bio on Art. For the last 32 years, he's worked in the alcohol drug prevention field, certainly since 2003 in the Vancouver area, working for the Vancouver Coastal Health as a prevention specialist consultant with the City of Vancouver, as well as the Vancouver Board of Education and the Vancouver Island Health Authority. So he's doing a lot of work in that area. From 1984 to 2003, he served as Executive Director of the Alcohol Drug Education Service, a provincial prevention agency, and prior to '84 was working as a prevention educator in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and then in Vancouver. He's the co-chair of the National Prevention Standards Task Force, a director of the Association of Substance Programs for BC, and a member of the City of Vancouver Prevention Network Committee. So he really comes to us with a lot of background in this area. I could read you for about 10 minutes all of the boards and all of the work that he's been doing. But I think I'm going to go right ahead and let him take charge of the presentation. And so I'm going to give the audio over to you, Art, and a warm welcome to you today.
Well, thanks very much, Dawn, and thank you to all of you folks who signed up to take part in this session today. It's great to see the interest. I think my mother would say that was a really nice bio. She would like it, and I guess it's mostly accurate. This is kind of a new experience for me to be using the webinar format, but I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, I can't see your faces, I can't hear your voices. I don't know if you just got my first joke or not, but we'll move along. I would like this to be interactive if we can. So please feel free to type things in on the little chat line there. I see someone saying they're having a little trouble hearing, and Dawn's working on that. So Dawn, let me know if there's anything you want me to do differently. So what I'm going to do is take us through a little PowerPoint here, and as I say, please raise your hand or indicate in other ways if you would like to make a comment, ask a question, whatever. I'd like it to be a little bit two-way if possible. So I'm going to just get started here. So SASI, as you saw, it stands for School-Age Children and Youth Substance Use Prevention Initiative. We're fond of calling it an approach as opposed to a program. And some people might think, well, that's just semantics, but we think it's important because sometimes the word program conjures up certain ways of thinking about it that might be a little more restrictive than what we're intending. And also we want to get across that we do somewhat different things in different schools and different settings. I'm seeing we're still having a little trouble with volume, but I'm going to carry on unless, Dawn, you send me a notice here that I need to do something differently. Let me just try to pique your interest a little more with a couple of quick stories. We've had some students go through the SASE program, and particularly the STEP part of it, which is the alternative to suspension. And one of the kids, we invite them to develop an action plan and to set some goals. Usually they set a couple of goals. One student, I think it was just about 2 weeks ago, set as their goal to have dinner with her family. And she explained how for the last 2 years she'd sit down at the dinner table, get her plate of food, pick it up, take it into the TV rooms and watch TV. As a result of going through some of the things that we've been doing with her, she has decided to try to stay and eat with the family. Now, I'm going to suggest to you that that's actually hugely important for alcohol and drug abuse prevention. It may not seem it on the surface, but we know that parental nurturance is one of the most important factors in helping kids to grow up and not develop problems with alcohol and other drugs. Another story, I think of another girl who went through a program, and her goal was to, she was quite a regular pot user, and her goal was to go to bed at night and try to go to sleep without getting stoned first. These are some of the things that these kids that we're dealing with are coming up with. We've also had some feedback from teachers that we've done some teacher training with, and I was struck by the fact that we did a Pro D day not too long ago at a major high school in Vancouver, and 6 of the teachers came up afterwards and said, that's the best professional development day I've ever been to. Now, I'm not saying this to blow my horn or blow the horn of the program, but I'm saying it because I am excited about what we're doing, and I think that we're seeing some encouraging results. I want to share with you what it is we're doing, and I do have some results. I don't have the full evaluation I can share with you, but I do have some evaluation that I will share with you. Dawn, I'm just going to check again about the sound. I see still messages going back and forth, so maybe I'll get off the mic for a minute in case you want to say anything about that.
Good morning, folks. It's Dawn, the moderator of the program this morning, and I'm wondering if folks are having sound problem, if it's because they're just using their computer sound card. You really do need a set of speakers unless you're watching or listening to this on your own with headphones. So if you could let me know, some people are saying they're hearing Dawn well, a little bit less so for Art. And so I think, Art, if you can just keep your microphone as close to your mouth as possible. But if you're listening through your computer card, it will be harder to hear if you're a group. Folks could perhaps put a happy face, look up at the happy face at the top by the participants, and just if you can hear Art and I well enough, just put a happy face up if you could do that now.
Okay, thanks, Don. Maybe just while people are doing that, well, let's hang on a sec. Let's see if we can get this settled first.
Okay, and so it looks like the majority are hearing the sound, and so I think we'll carry on. And those of you that are having problems, what you will find with the recording afterwards, if you want to run through it with recording, the sound will be better if you have speakers. Otherwise, I'm not quite sure what else to say, and I guess we'll just carry on with the slides. Thanks, Art.
Okay, so carrying on. So what is the evidence base for what we're doing? Well, we've drawn on a broad range of research and data in the prevention field. Here's a few quick examples. Ray Corrado, a researcher here at SFU, you can see there on the screen some of the things that he's found about developing socially responsible behavior. Whoops, pushed the wrong button here. Let me get the right button. There we go. Gordon Neufeld, no doubt many of you would be familiar with some of his work and his books. He stresses attachment a lot. He stresses the importance of parenting, not letting the peers be the parents. Kimberly Schwanek-Reichel, if there's anyone that we've probably drawn on more heavily than others, it's probably her. She's really a foremost leader in social and emotional learning and development, and her work has been really pivotal. You can see there she summarizes three main things: autonomy, belonging, and competence. Another way of saying belonging is connectedness. That whole aspect of kids who feel connected to youth, to family, to school, and community are at much lower risk for a whole host of problems. Also, note her comment there about kids who feel connected to an adult other than a parent. And it's not just Kimberly's research that's found this, others have as well. That one of the things we work proactively with teachers around is how they can make very simple, even 5-minute connections with at-risk youth, because we know that the evidence is clear that can be really helpful. Of course, the asset development, the SASA program is a strengths-based program as opposed to deficit-based. So we see kids as a resource, as having great strengths to bring to all this. We don't view it as a problem. And of course, the Search Institute's work on developmental assets is relevant to all of that. I'm just going to give Dawn a chance to talk here and see how we're doing with the sound. Dawn, is there anything to report on that?
Amanda said that they've connected speakers and they can hear now, so I think we'll just carry on.
Okay, thanks. So sort of to summarize it, although there's a lot of data that we've drawn on, and you'll see if you go to the wiki later, we will have some of that on the site. But the social emotional learning is very, very important to what we're doing and positive youth development. Now, how did SASA get started? Well, it was really the school board, represented here by VSB, Vancouver School Board, social responsibility people. They did some investigating, and this was back in 2004, and they felt that while there were some encouraging things happening around alcohol and drug prevention and early intervention, there really wasn't enough going on. So for instance, not all kids were receiving either classroom education or support. Certainly not all parents were being educated. Not all teachers were being reached and trained. There wasn't clear policy in many places. So they felt that more was needed. One of the things that they did right at the beginning was they reached out to Vancouver Coastal Health, so that's the health authority. And I'm just trying here to highlight, there we go, look at that, isn't that nifty? The little yellow marker, approach VCH. So what that's saying is the school board went to the health authority and they partnered up on this project and have continued to be partners ever since. That has been extremely important. This problem, this incidence of substance misuse is not something that any one institution can adequately address. Obviously, we went on from there and involved other groups, so I'll just see if I can circle these groups here down at the bottom of the page with the slide there. So VPD is the Vancouver Police Department, particularly the school liaison officers. The City of Vancouver, so the Parks and Recreation people, the social planning people, the drug policy people, UBC, some of the researchers up there, and the Center for Addictions Research of BC. So it's a multi-sectoral approach, and that's proved to be very important. So what's the mission? After a lot of research and deliberation, we came up with the fact that we were trying to strengthen the infrastructure for prevention and early intervention, and trying to do 3 things. So again, here I'll just circle these if I can. I would argue that if we were doing this little presentation today 20 years ago, we probably would have identified only the first one, to prevent substance use. In other words, kind of the thinking of, well, let's just stop it. Let's just, we'll just put an end to it. Well, we've tried, and so have others. And so obviously we're into a 3-pronged thing where of course we're trying to prevent it. We're also, though, trying to delay, because the literature is very clear that if an 18-year-old is starting to have a beer or 2 on a Friday night, that's very different than a young person who's 12 years old getting drunk every weekend. So delay of onset, very, very important. Now, one of the assumptions that we make in SASE is that in the high schools, not all kids use drugs. We also assume that in the high schools, not every kid uses drugs. So we have to acknowledge the fact that kids are at different stages, and so the preventing substance use problems relates to working with kids who are engaged in some drug use, but we want them to develop less problems from that. Okay, so part of the philosophy here. So I already mentioned about the multi-sectoral. That's it there that I'm just highlighting. That refers to the multiple players that are involved. Comprehensive you'll see more about this in just a second here, refers to the fact that there's 4 distinct aspects to the SASE approach. Part of our other philosophies are it's inclusive. The whole idea is we're interested in bringing kids closer rather than pushing them away. We're interested in strengths and assets, not deficits. I'm just looking here now at this one here. We're interested in, when we go into a school, we do an environmental scan and find out what are they already doing. And at least in Vancouver, schools are doing a ton of things, and a lot of them are very good and very exciting. So we come in and we say, we're here with some resources. We want to augment, we want to strengthen. Maybe there's some things that you've never been able to get to that we can do. That's very different, obviously, than coming in and saying, stop what you're doing, we have the answer, forget all your programs and use our SASE program and everything will be right with the world. Not only would that be very arrogant and inappropriate, it wouldn't work anyway. So what we're trying to do is augment what's in place. Obviously, we're evidence-based. Another thing that's really important about the SASE initiative that I think is a bit unique is it pertains to being strengths-based, but it's this whole notion of giving youth a voice. And I'll tell you more about how we do that in a minute. We also are attempting to do things that are relevant to the lived experiences of the youth, and we are using a whole school approach. In the early days, back in 2004, one of the things that it was like an advisory group that was meeting of the Vancouver Coastal Health, the school board, the police, the UBC, all those groups. They were just meeting and having meetings and discussing what to do. And they felt, well, let's check our assumptions. So they commissioned a study, a consultation, and this was done, went out into 7 schools in the Vancouver area, talked to parents, administrators, teachers, and kids. And here are the key main findings. You can read those on the screen there. And so that was very informative in shaping what we were going to do in SASE. We also did a best practices literature review. I don't have a slide on that, but we then took the findings of that consultation and compared to best practices to see, well, gosh, what are they in sync? Does the literature reinforce? And in fact, there was a lot of agreement. And both those documents are available. They'll be on the wiki later. Okay, so here's the comprehensive approach, the 4 streams, what we call STEP, which stands for SASE Teen Engagement Program, and that's our 3-day off-site centralized program for young people who are incurring problems at school as a result of alcohol or other drug use. We have a parent engagement stream, a student engagement stream, and then a classroom curriculum and teacher training stream. So here's a question for you. Maybe you can indicate by typing in the chat room which of these streams are of most interest to you, or which one are you involved in the most, or any comments about the 4 streams? Does anybody have anything that you would like to say at this point? Okay, hey, that's really helpful. Thank you, everyone. Oh, and some more still coming in here. Okay, yeah, the step. Explain that again. Sure, I'll do that for sure. 3 and 1. Oh boy, so we've got a good mix here. People are interested in a variety of things. That's great. That's excellent. Okay, I'm going to carry on. Thank you for your feedback on that. Obviously, the thing that I want to emphasize, and I'll highlight it here, is that they are interrelated. In other words, another way of saying it is that all are important. And part of the strength of SASE, I believe, is that we are doing all 4. We debated about, well, let's just start with parents, or let's just do classroom, and gradually build other streams. And we opted instead to attempt, we started only with 2 schools, so we started small, but we had all 4 streams in place. The advantage of that is you can get consistent messaging across the streams. So a parent attending a parent night is getting certain messaging about how to communicate to kids, about specifics around alcohol and drugs. That their student in a classroom drug education class is getting similar messages that maybe that same student involved in a SASE youth group or youth club of some sort is getting similar messaging. And the policies that are in place reflect similar things. So you get a kind of building on one another that effect that is very important. Just a quick word about where we're at with the program. There's 18 high schools in the Vancouver district. Now, in addition, each of those schools has anywhere from 1 to sometimes 5 or 6 alternative programs attached to them. And of course, they all have anywhere from a handful of elementary feeder schools to a large number of elementary feeder schools. But there's 18 secondary schools. Presently, we're in our just starting our 3rd year of implementation, and we have the STEP program, which I will explain more in a minute, now available to all schools, as well as the curriculum. The student engagement and parent engagement is a little more labor intensive, and we don't have enough personnel at this point to offer that to all of the schools. So we're in 7 schools, gradually expanding to 10, and then you can see there that our goal is by 2011 to be in all 4 streams in all schools. We work with a multitude of people. And this is just a quick list. I know there's a lot of acronyms here, but the first item here, the stream lead, so that's our workers. And then we have in BC, or at least in Vancouver, well actually in BC, we have what we call prevention specialists who are employees of the health authorities. And in Vancouver there's 6 of those, so we work closely with those. And then, of course, there's the administrators, the school administrators, the school counselors, the CST, that refers to community school team, so that's a youth and family worker, a teacher, and others who are specialists. Obviously teachers, public health nurses, it looks like a few of you are online here today. Very key, we're doing a lot of work with the nurses. Obviously the students, we have multicultural workers in Vancouver, we have Swiss workers, which are settlement workers, and both the multicultural and Swiss workers have been hugely important, mainly because with our parent work, we now offer workshops in 5 different languages, and it's these folks here who help us to deliver that. PAC, that refers to Parent Advisory Council, SLO, School Liaison Officer, Youth Addiction Counselors. Not listed here are First Nations support workers, other youth counselors. I mean, the list kind of goes on and on. The point is, again, we're trying to bring resources to the schools, so we're trying to train and support these sorts of folks to help us deliver some of the things that we're doing. Okay, let's go through each stream by stream. So The STEP stands for Sassy Team Engagement Program. This is, for lack of a better word, it's an alternative to suspension program. Essentially, it started off, we've only been operating it since December of last year, but we were about a year and a bit in the planning and development of it. It's a 3-day structured program. It's at a central location. One of the things that we do is we run it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday each week. We have 2 staff delivering the program. And although we were tempted to run it with continuous intake, so still a 3-day program, but new people joining each day as needed, we, partly because of resources, were unable to do that initially and went with this Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday format, and we're now finding that that has tremendous strengths. One of the advantages is that by day 3, we've worked with those kids enough, we've developed rapport, we've done enough things with them that we're able to really get down to some really, really specific and quite powerful things on day 3. Which wouldn't likely happen if we had new kids coming and joining, kids leaving, and all that kind of turnover, and every student at a different stage each day. So for our purposes anyways, we're finding that very beneficial. The other advantage of running Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is if a kid is, say, on a Wednesday, they're found they've got some marijuana in their locker, it's determined that they're going to be sending the kid to STEP, they can't send them until the following Tuesday. So what does the school do? Well, it's a problem and it's a challenge. But what we like about it is it reinforces our philosophy, which is these students are your students. It's your community. We're not a magic bullet. We're not going to fix everything. So you need to figure it out, folks. So we work with the schools around, yeah, what can you do that would be helpful in the interim. Typically, kids just continue to attend school. Some schools implement a sort of quasi-suspension where the lunch hours and all the breaks they have to go and report to the office and stay in the office. So different schools do it differently, but again, we find the 3-day approach working very well. The last thing on this slide, just quickly mention, you can see the goal there. Whoa, look at that crazy line. The goal, there's limits to what we can do. We could have said as a goal that all kids will quit using drugs, or the kids will never use drugs on weekends or evenings. Well, we don't even have jurisdiction. We wouldn't be able to make that happen anyways. What we do have responsibility for is that kids come to school straight and sober. So it's a little bit like an EAP model, and again, we use this in our teacher training and administration training. So we say to them, essentially we're trying to say, turn down the heat a bit, folks. Let's move away a little bit from what one principal called kind of the Guantanamo response, where you catch a kid, and by golly, the next day that kid's going to be in a program, and we don't want to see that kid back in the school until they've addressed that, been through that program. Sorry, I'm just trying to get rid of that noise there. So, okay, there we go. So the goal that is realistic and that we can achieve and aim for is that kids come to school events clean and sober. There's a lot more that I can say about the STEP program. I'll see how our time goes. Maybe I'll say more a little later. For now, let me just give you the overview of the 4 streams. The parent stream. Oh, we got a question here. Okay. Remind me now, Dawn. What's the procedure here?
Earl has asked the questions, how many students do you take at a time in your program?
Great, I see now where that question came up. Thank you. We've sort of worked on that. Short answer is, so far the most we've ever had is 12. And our staff kind of felt that was getting to be plenty. I think we might go as high as 15. We have 2 staff there. If we have a split of kids, say we've got some grade 12 guys and some grade 8 girls or something like that, we might even split the group. On the low end, we've gone as low as, we've actually run the program with 1 student. In that case, we do some things to change it up a bit. Usually do a little field trip, do some other activities so that it's not just intensive one-on-one time the whole time. So yeah, the short answer is anywhere from 1 to 12, maybe maximum 15. Thanks, Cheryl, for the question. If others have questions, please feel free. So with the parent engagement, just since we've just been talking about STEP, I'll just mention, oh, sorry, I made a mark there I didn't even intend to. Anyways, here's the goals of the parent stream. Fairly, probably what you would expect. The third one is a challenging one, and one that I guess we all work on, but it's certainly one that we've stated as a goal. How do we do that? So I'm just going to skip down here. I'm going to circle this one here since we were just talking about STEP. So while your mind is still on STEP, I said it runs Tuesday to Thursday. On Tuesday morning, we have one of our parent engagement workers on site at STEP available to meet with parents. On Monday, our cutoff for referrals to the STEP program are Monday at noon. And that way, Monday afternoon, our STEP coordinator phones all the homes. And so we contact the parents, not from the standpoint of, a little more like the school night around your kid's been caught and here's what's going to happen. We phone more with, okay, so you've heard from the school, you know that your student's coming, your child's going to be coming to our program. How are you doing? How are you feeling about things? Would you like some more information? We have resources and ideas, materials we can share. So we're calling to be a support to the parents, and you can see here that our parent engagement stream links into the STEP program so that as the kids go through STEP, the parents learn about the workshops that we're offering for parents, they learn about websites, they learn about other resources, so we try to make the linkage that way. Anyways, back to the top of the bullets here, so the workshop series. These workshops focus primarily on communication, and secondly, how to keep the connection with your youth, especially in the adolescent years. We offer those in a variety of languages, and this year we're experimenting with doing those in a sequence where they culminate in something called a Capacity Cafe, which I'm just highlighting now. And the Capacity Cafe is a safe and structured format where we use our young people that we're working with as educators to adults. And so using sometimes a stations approach or discussion circle groups, adults, whether it's a parent group or a teacher group, and they're done separately, supply questions to these youth. In the case of teachers, they do it anonymously in writing beforehand. In the case of parents, they generally just do it as an open discussion. And the youth speak about adolescent culture and about drug use, any of the things that comes up. It's proven to be a very, very powerful technique. It's had a huge impact on all participants. The kids leave the events feeling 10 feet tall. They feel like they've been listened to, respected. They can't believe that adults are interested in what they think. And frankly, a lot of these kids are the kids that are failing all their grades. They've dropped out of music. They've dropped out of sports. Sometimes their appearance is such that a lot of adults would pull back. And here are these kids speaking with great wisdom and insight about adolescent culture. The adults, when we do it with the parents, we do use students from a different school, so the parents don't know the kids. It's not anonymous in that sense. And the parents' report is just so helpful to be able to say to a young person the age and stage of their youth, gosh, my kid ran away last week. Why would a kid run away? Or I heard my kid on the phone arranging to get beer go down to the river this week. I don't understand it. What should I do? And the kids respond to this, and it's proved to be very, very important, very helpful. When we do it with the teachers, incidentally, we use the kids from the school. So we eliminate the anonymity on purpose. We have the teachers dealing with actual students that they deal with all the time. And boy, again, I'm telling you, it can be a very, very powerful experience. There's a lot of safety and structure and things built in so that this is done in a way that is not only respectful but handles potential disclosures and other sorts of things that can come up. I think I'm going to move on here. So youth engagement stream, again, we have workers hired who are available to do this work. Sorry. And here's the purpose of the youth engagement stream: to engage the youth, to invite their participation in peer-led activities, to do things that are relevant to their lived experiences, and to draw youth closer, to help them reconnect. How do we do that? We use a variety of activities. This is sort of a menu, if you will, of activities that we offer to schools. We don't have the resources and staff to do all of these at all schools, so we kind of negotiate with the school. We do the environmental scan, find out what they already have in place, find out what their strengths and gaps are, and kind of work with the counselors and other school workers to determine, hey, what do you think makes sense here? What are these things? The one-day workshop is kind of a shortened version of STEP. And what we do there is we work with the counselors, the youth and family workers, the administration, and the teachers to identify youth who we think might benefit from being pulled out of the classroom for one day, right on site at the school, and our youth workers come in and do a day session with them. Some of that is around alcohol and drug information. A lot of it is around visioning, goal setting, where are you headed, how are you doing in getting there, and they're proving to be very, very effective workshops. The capacity cafes I've already referred to. The community service learning opportunity. One of the things, again, in the literature that's very clear is that to strengthen connectivity, it's important that people have a chance to give back, that people have a chance to serve. And so we have our youth stream organizing typically with the kids at the school. They organize things like a sock and mitten hat drive. They collect all this stuff, they take it to the downtown east side or to the street people and hand it out. One of the schools has twice done, oh, I see there's a question. I'll just come to that in half a sec. One of the other examples of the community service learning is a chili distribution where the kids using the school cafeteria and donations from the community cook up a big batch of chili, take it out on the streets and serve street people this. Then we meet with the kids after these events and do some work around, well, what have we learned from this and what did it feel like to do it and all that kind of thing. Okay, so Sue is asking, are these only at-risk students who would go to this? Really good question. Thank you, Sue. Obviously, our policy is anyone's welcome. The way we recruit and promote these things is not, do you have an alcohol and drug problem, so come to this. What we say to kids through assemblies, through classroom presentations is we sassy people are interested in issues related to alcohol and other drugs. If you have ideas about this or have views on this, why not come to our meetings? Why not come to our club? Why not get involved? So the hook is, hey, you got something to say? You got some thoughts, some ideas on this? Typically, we do get kids that are at risk, kids that are using, but we also get kids who aren't using and have strong feelings about that as well. When I get to the classroom work that we do, that's more of our universal approach. So to answer your question a little further, Sue, we do classroom across the board universal drug education for all kids. The youth engagement stream, in all honesty, probably does veer a little more towards a targeted intervention as opposed to universal. And we know that these kids, some of these kids are on a trajectory that we think we can interrupt that. We think we can catch them before they end up in either the alternative school program or indeed dropping out of school on the street with heavy chronic problems. So I hope that answers your question. You can see here again that it talks here about a check-in for kids after the STEP program. So obviously after kids done STEP, we want to do follow-up, and I don't think I even mentioned, or maybe I mentioned briefly, that the kids develop a little action plan. We also ask them to identify one ally, an adult ally in the school, and it could be the cook in the cafeteria, it could be the secretary, it could be the teacher, the coach, whoever. And all it is an adult that the kid feels, pays attention to them, listens to them, cares about them, shows some interest in them. And we ask them, we invite them to go and share their action plan with that adult. So one of the things the Youth Engagement Stream does is it checks in either with the youth directly or with the counseling people and the prevention specialists to see how that's going. Have they checked in with their ally? Are they attending SASI or any other thing? Is there anything more we can do? So that kind of follow-up with step kids is important. And then the last item here is the grade-specific classroom-led discussion. So we're really bullish, and when I get to the curriculum you'll see, we're big on training teachers and teachers delivering classroom drug education. However, we use a constructivist education model. It's not an intensely alcohol and drug content focus. So what we do here in the Youth Engagement Stream is we do offer typically just one session with, say, all the grade 8s going classroom by classroom on maybe marijuana use or on binge drinking. We had a math teacher in grade 12 who said, could you please come and talk to my grade 12s about binge drinking? And so we respond to that. So that's the other piece that we offer as resources and time permit. Oh, she was saying yes. I think she means yes, I answered the question. Terrific. Thanks, Sue. That's great. Okay, curriculum and teacher training. What we've done here, it so happened that as we were starting SASI, that the Center for Addiction Research of BC had just been hired by the Ministry of Health of BC to develop brand new classroom drug education materials. And so I'll just use my highlighter here. We signed on to become one of the pilot sites. That says 4. I think actually there's more than that now. I think they may have 6 or 7. Maybe some of you from BC might know. In any event, we have the grade 6. The materials are called iMinds, and we have the grade 6 materials. Last year we tried them out in a few schools. We just did a teacher training just Friday of last week and had about 25 people from across the district attend, again with the grade 6. Later this year we'll be rolling out the grade 7 and hopefully the grade 8. Eventually it'll cover grades 6 to 10. Now, oh gee, I guess I don't have a slide here. What I want to just say about that is the approach of this curriculum. It's a constructivist model, so it's the kids building on their knowledge as they work through sequential activities. And it's a nuanced approach. So it's not a, this is overstating it, but to make my point, it's not an approach that implies there's one right answer. That drugs are bad and you're bad if you use them and you shouldn't use drugs. We just find that approach doesn't get us very far with kids. So the approach that this curriculum uses, and one of the reasons we like it, is a little more sophisticated, a little more nuanced, and it really engages the youth and engages the teachers. Okay, so gosh, there's so much more I could say about all the streams, but I'm going to leave it at that for now, I think, and tell you a little bit about, well, so what's resulted from all this, and then, again, of course, we can have questions and discuss further. We hired an external evaluator in the school year 2006-2007. We started off small. We were just in a couple of schools, and we did some good evaluation. I'll share some results with you in a minute. I'll just point out that last school year, which is the one I'm just circling now, 07-08, we opted to hire a different external evaluator. Not that the first one didn't do an adequate job, but we saw a need to have something that was a little more academically rigorous and would allow for more comparisons across programs in other jurisdictions. And so we needed just a little different emphasis. And the only reason I mention that is you'll see when I go through a few slides here in a minute that the presentation of the results looks a little bit different. But the important thing, obviously, is we started as a pilot project. We're now in year 3, so we're arguably kind of moving out of the pilot phase and into regular ongoing implementation. So evaluation, though, obviously is hugely important for funding and for a whole host of reasons. So here's a few results from our first year where we had fairly small numbers. So the 25 students referred to here, I'm just highlighting, those are students who were the kind of the really active, sassy kids, if you will. And you can see that 84% of them reported that they're communicating more with at least one adult. So notice what we're measuring. We're measuring things like connectedness to other adults, because the literature is so clear on that. And here we're finding that a lot of them found that Sassy enabled them to do that better. We also found here that 28% of the kids reported that they're no longer using alcohol and drugs at school, as well as their participation in Sassy. Here we have a chart on how accepted kids feel, and you can see before Sassy, if you look primarily here at the last two bars, you compare those two with these two here, you can see that it rose from, what do we got here, 28% to, what's that, 68% of kids who are feeling, you know, on the high end of the scale here about how accepted they feel. All of this, again, ties into the connectivity theory and notion that when kids feel more accepted, they're more likely to get involved, they're more likely to be engaged, they're more likely to feel a part of the community, and that puts them at lower risk for drug use. How aware were students, parents, and teachers of where to go for, actually the full question is where to go for help, so more help with alcohol and drugs, or more information regarding alcohol and other drugs. I'm assuming everybody's familiar with AOD. That just refers to alcohol and other drugs. So here we are, students before and after, parents in schools. And you can see the parents particularly quite a large increase, but everybody increased as a result of participating in Sassy. Here's a bit of feedback from that first year. And you can see the different people giving the feedback. Grade 8 student wanted to have a place to be heard, wanted to have her voice heard. I'll let you read those comments. A parent here reporting that they were able to keep things in perspective a little bit more. We see that as very valuable. Now, in the last year, I'm sneaking a few results out to you guys here. We haven't officially released all these, but I'll share just a few things. So this is from last year, a little larger sample group, 6 schools involved. And hopefully, I'm hoping you can all read that okay. I know the print's a bit small. Let's see, I would just like to, well, you can look through that. You can see the very last one there, students reporting 86% reporting quite a bit or a lot of agreement that Sassy has been positive for them. All of these indicators you can see, you know, pretty encouraging sorts of results there. Here's another graph, the results of my involvement in Sassy. So again, it's the students responding, and here we are, for instance, here feeling more included. A little bit, 20%, and quite a bit or a lot, 70%. And again, that being included ties into our core goals. Feeling more understood. How important is that? How many of us long for that? So there's some improvement there. More valued. And we're really seeing this in the schools that we're working. These at-risk kids walking through the halls, holding their heads high. I remember one parent session that we did, and we used our Sassy kids to help plan it and carry it out and set it up and take it down, but they also hosted it. So when the parents arrived at the door, they were met by one of these, quote, at-risk youth who greeted them, took them down the hall, and literally made small conversation with them about, you know, how are you enjoying the weather or whatever, as they walked to the room where the event was going to be held. And it was quite interesting to see the responses of both the parents and the kids as we involved these kids in some meaningful involvement that way. Oops, sorry, just go back one. Just one more tidbit here. Has coming to meetings and hanging out with Sassy has been a positive experience for you, and 100% of the kids reporting that they found it was. Just to summarize, the SASE project really makes strong efforts to get at the root issues. We don't really believe that having a lot of knowledge about all the short and long-term effects of every drug is all that relevant on Friday night when the girl you're trying to impress lights up a joint and hands it to you. So we're more interested in finding out what it is that the kids are using the drugs to do for them. So whether it's dealing with pain or loss or hurt or trauma or abuse or curiosity or boredom or whatever it is, we need to get to those underlying issues. We're fond of saying that our approach is really more about people than it is about substances. Substances come and go. Not to downplay it, the drugs are important, and especially as you get further into drug use, they become even more critical. If someone's dealing with crack cocaine versus marijuana, there are some very significant differences, whatever. So the drugs are important, but I think you get my point that ultimately the underlying aspects of this whole issue is people trying to manage and cope. If you haven't heard about Bruce Alexander's new book, The Globalization of Addiction, I think I've got that title right, that's a very interesting resource to consult further on this notion that we tend to compensate in a whole variety of ways. Many of them are addictive ways or compulsive ways. Alcohol and drugs is one. Workaholism, sex, gambling, lots of other things are as well. So again, if we deal with people and the underlying issues, we're more likely to be helping people across the board. And we're certainly finding that with SASE. Some of the kids going through the STEP program don't necessarily identify a drug-related goal, but they start working on, for instance, passing math this year. And it's not long before they start to realize that they can't do that and smoke up 5 times a day, every day, and go to school. And so it's one of the most rewarding things for me about the SASE project has been when we've taken the approach of strengths-based, supporting kids and building them up, helping them get in tune with what they care about, what they're passionate about, setting goals. The kids coming to us and saying, I'd like to cut back on my drug use. I'd like to quit smoking pot. They brought it up because we could have gone to them from the get-go and said, you know what, you kids, you need to stop smoking pot, and we're going to show you ways to do that and help you do that. We haven't taken that kind of head-on approach, and it's very gratifying to see the young people coming to us and self-identifying that that's something they want to do and need to do. Here is my contact information. It's probably available elsewhere too, but there it is there. Helenka, just so you know, is kind of my counterpart at the Vancouver Coastal Health Authority, which is on here just to emphasize again that it's partly their money, their people, and the school board money and school board people that are most involved in this project and making it possible. So it is truly a joint venture. Oh, hey, look, there's Cindy Andrew. And there is my last slide, and I'm really open to go back to some slides and elaborate further or attempt to answer any questions that there might be. So I'm going to shut off my mic for a minute in case Dawn wants to say anything. And certainly if any of you want to type in the chat line any comments or questions, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Art. Lots of thoughts and questions I have in my mind, but I'm just going to first of all make a comment. Many of the folks listening today are working with public health and probably will be wondering what could be their next step with something like this. This is what folks in our school district in BC call a turnaround program. And what happens usually when students get into trouble around drug or alcohol abuses and things that interfere with their schooling, they bring alcohol to school or they come to school stoned or whatever, what has tended to happen is that kids are suspended. And so it's like a double jeopardy. Not only are they struggling with this problem, but they also get sent home or sent away from the school and then are more likely to re-offend. And I know our school district is looking at turnaround programs, and then there's programs like this already in existence. So I guess for public health folks, your first question will be what does happen in our own district or our own area to kids involved in drugs and alcohol, and is there a possibility that we could look at a program like this? So just a comment, that comment. I have two questions. My first question is, we're hearing in the literature, the research, that there's a lot of students struggling with anxiety, so I'm wondering if that's one of the root issues as well. And my second question is, can you kind of tell us quickly what percentage of funding comes from other agencies, and so how would other people approach that funding issue? And I see Sue has a question too. So maybe those questions, just funding, anxiety, and Sue's question, Art.
Okay, great, thanks very much. I see Sue's question right there, so I'll start with that one. We typically so far have not taught the sessions, but we're not taking a hard line on that. It's mainly a resource issue. We don't really have the time, but actually it's more than that, because our philosophy is that we want to equip the system. We want to build capacity in the system. So we found that it's a little too easy for teachers to say, you know, I just don't feel prepared. I don't think I can handle this. It's just way too threatening. What we're doing in response to that is referring them to programs like iMinds that are very teacher-friendly, because it's a lot of inquiry method activities. Therefore, no one is an expert, including the teacher, on alcohol and drugs. They don't need to be to deliver the program. And we would act as a resource to it. But the short answer is we don't do a lot of the teaching and probably won't. We do, as I mentioned, under the youth engagement stream, offer some specialized alcohol and drug education on, say, binge drinking or the effects of marijuana on adolescent development or something like that. So, Sue, hope that helps you. Dawn, your questions. Yes, thank you. Anxiety, absolutely a huge issue, and a lot of literature on that. You're absolutely right. No question that underpins a lot of what we do. We also, within the Vancouver system, have another whole initiative specifically around mental health and anxiety. It's getting underway. It's not fully developed yet, but it's coming along. And so one of the things we're doing is we're meeting regularly with those people that are doing that and looking at ways to cross-pollinate, to work together. But yes, everything we do has actually a fairly strong mental health component to it. And even right in the iMinds curriculum, which is very explicit about having mental health goals as part of it. The funding, primarily the way it's been working is VSB, the school board, and the health authority have been the main funders, but we have applied with success to National Crime Prevention Center and received funding from them, as well as the Vancouver Foundation. The other organizations like the City Police, the City of Vancouver, the UBC, CAR, those groups have contributed in kind, but not particularly hard cash at this point. Are there other questions? Maybe what I can just say in regards to your comment on is anything that those of you in the public health sector, if you can work with your schools around what Dawn was pointing out, that help them to look at what is the impact of suspending kids, of sending them home or having them sit outside the principal's office with no remedial effort, no education, no intervention, nothing, just, you know, and if you can work with them to help them see that a punitive approach doesn't bring the results we want. It further isolates, it further links kids with other drug-using kids often, and so programs like the STEP program, which is, I keep emphasizing, set in the broader context of SASE, because we know of a couple of school districts here in BC who have something equivalent, somewhat equivalent to the STEP program, but they don't have the other three streams. And so, again, the program tends to be viewed more as kind of this magic bullet. You ship the kids out for 3 days and they come back and everything should be different. And whereas I think the approach we're taking, you're just always reinforcing that it's a community issue. We need multiple responses, and sending kids off for 3 days is one, and it's very strategic, but it's not the only one. And someone put their hand up. Do you find the schools accepting of the program? We've had to do some selling for sure, especially in our first year. And we have had some folks, not too much to our face, but indirectly have been critical. Some have suggested we're soft on drugs or too harm reduction. And we don't try to face those things head on. One of the things we've been very successful with is getting good buy-in at very high levels. So the school trustees and the senior management in the school district, we've educated them. We've made numerous presentations to them and helped them realize that continuing to do status quo absolutely is not an option. That they're gonna have a problem that is so huge they're not going to be able to manage it. Is it mandatory for kids to go to STEP? The way that works, Sue, is we educate schools about what STEP is. We train the administration counselors in how to refer to it and how to use it. But we support them and train them around how to decide who is it suitable for. So then what the schools do, the short answer is it's up to the school. So a principal at their discretion may say to Johnny, you are required to go to STEP. But he may say to Rachel, you know what, I think it'd be really helpful if you went to this. I'd really recommend it. Are you interested? So they use different approaches depending on the family, the situation, the context, how many times this has come up. And we let them use that however it works to their best advantage. So it's not mandatory in the traditional sense of if you're caught, you must attend STEP. But by and large, the vast majority of kids are being referred to STEP.
Okay, so I'm going to leap in there. We're just up at the top of the hour, and I know Cindy Andrew is online and is going to do our thank yous and compliments. We will stay on the site for a few minutes after, so if some of you still have some questions and you want to type them in, Art and I will be here, and for sure a lot of information will be sent to you later today with the information about the wiki. But I'm going to get off the audio. Thank you, Art, and I'm going to just ask Cindy to close for us. Thanks, Dawn, and special thanks to you, Art, for sharing what I think is a very powerful program and quite refreshing. I suspect many people are thinking in terms of, the recognizing that there isn't a simple answer to what is clearly a very, very complex issue. And so thank you for sharing. I know that there are probably many folks on the call today that would love to see a webinar on each of the particular streams of SASE, and we've certainly tried to do our best to help share really practical, useful information via this wiki. That's a web-based shared workspace, if you will, where we have built a fair bit of information that will help folks as they follow up on this call. But I guess a couple of comments I wanted to make in terms of what you shared. That it's interesting you mentioned that National Crime Prevention Center provided funding, and I think we often we tend to pigeonhole issues, and yet the reality is we all know well that as we talk about social emotional learning and asset development, et cetera, that there's so many inextricable links between things like the school safety issues, mental health, substance abuse, et cetera. And as we're in, school suspensions as an example as well, that if as we work, whether in education or public health, to continue to build the evidence base of what works and what doesn't, and to help share that and use it in our arguments, we're getting there for sure. And so we hope that this day has helped people, and certainly welcome additional comments and sharing via the wiki platform. There are a couple of, there's a number of substance abuse related webinars on the docket for this coming year. Several relate directly to some of the issues you flagged today, for instance more on social emotional learning as well as alternatives to suspension, that I really encourage folks to tell your friends about and to join in for those. But most importantly, Art, thank you. Your work is stellar, and I'm really pleased that you're able to take the time to share with us today.
Well, thank you very much, Cindy and Dawn. I appreciate those kind words, and I of course want to emphasize that I'm the voice of the project, but there's quite a number of people working with me that have just been so absolutely pivotal in all this. But it's it is an exciting approach, and I'm delighted to be a part of it. I see some questions here. Anything like this exists in Ontario? Maybe others can chime in here. I'm not aware of another program that takes quite such a comprehensive approach. And I'm certainly not aware of any other program in Canada and probably North America that uses certain aspects, for instance, the Capacity Cafe, the giving voice to the youth, and then using it in the broader context. But I'll go offline here. Maybe someone else knows more.
Art, it's Cindy here. You know, I'd have to agree from what I know, and certainly I'm not a specific expert in the area of substance abuse, but my understanding is there are efforts, but they certainly don't represent the comprehensive nature that SASE addresses. I know Nova Scotia's got a lot of really good work underway, and there are pockets and communities across this country that have really are making good gains, but I think SASE pulls together the various elements really well, and I think we'll continue to share in that responsibility to want it to continue to provide folks the rich learnings you have. Something that I neglected to mention that I think is important, the issue of deliverer of messages is a really important one. There's an interesting piece out of Nova Scotia's work that talks about that and talks about how it is, you know, the whole idea of having outside deliverers come in to deliver substance abuse type prevention programs, more or less in a nutshell, doesn't seem to be terribly effective for a bunch of reasons. So I'm going to add that link to that information online to the wiki. I think that's really important because often as folks work with schools, they're asked, you know, hey, could you come in and help us? And who can blame schools for asking because they're very, very busy. But I think it's important to have some good data to say, here's what we can do and here's why we don't come into the classroom. So I'll pass that on to folks as well.
Cindy, just a quick comment on that. I really agree. What we tell folks is if you have a broad approach, if you do things before the speaker and after the speaker, and you fit a speaker into a context, that's one thing. But if you're just relying on an outside speaker to come in and address this whole issue, that's fraught with problems. It's not to say it can't have some positive contribution, but one of the things I don't like about it is it tends to reinforce the notion that the school's kind of powerless. We don't really know what to do with this, and we got to bring in these external experts all the time. What we're trying to do with SASE is build up capacity and infrastructure within the system. Yes, we're a resource, but we're putting it back onto the schools and the teachers. We're saying that the days of saying, gosh, I hate having that stoner at the back of the classroom, but I'm not going to do anything about it, that those days are over, and that we're all in this, and there's a role for everybody, and everybody has some contribution that they should be looking at.
So just as you're getting off this program, I'll explain to you that you go up to the file at the top and then you click on the file and then go down to exit. That'll get you out of this room. And also thank you for all your information about the sound. We've moved away from the conference calls because we could not afford to run the webinars at that point. They were quite expensive. Even if you had only 6 people on, you were paying hundreds of dollars for the bridging. So there is some issues trying to get speakers, trying to get better sound, but we certainly are working on that. And I think next time I'll listen to the webinar through speakers as well and just see how that works on my computer. Right now I'm using a headset. So thank you folks for all of the information that you've shared with us. And I will send you, we have 2 webinars coming up very quickly within the next month, both on a turnaround program like this and another one on Dr. Kim Schonert-Reichel, who is going to do a session. Hopefully we'll see you folks on that. So thanks very much everyone, and we're going to sign off from here. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
And thanks, Art. I think we done it.
Oh yeah, you're welcome, Don. That was a really interesting experience. I enjoyed doing it, and it's a little different way of doing it. But yeah, from my point, I think it went okay. I hope it was interesting for everybody out there.
I think it moved along very smoothly. I think the sound is an issue because if everyone's on an individual headset, it's much clearer. But when folks are, I don't know what the speakers sound like, so I'm going to do that next time. But I think that's a bit of an issue. But certainly for us, for the CASH folks, it's just a super way for us to move forward. Otherwise, we were really struggling. We started webinars last year as part of a grant and it was funded, but we no longer have those grants. And so we're trying to scramble and make it happen, and yet do it in a way that if there's only 6 people interested, we can run it, or if there's 26 people interested. So I know a number of people said that they were listening as part of a group, and so that's the issue, is how it sounds with speakers. But it certainly was clear at my end, and I am very excited about the program. I see it as the way we must go. And I know in your region, I mean, there is some funding support in our little district up here in Salmon Arm. That hasn't happened yet, but I know for kids' sake, and I'm looking forward to hearing about the Kamloops model, it's what we need to do. So I think it's a really important part of the plan we're trying to move forward with, to let people know about programs out there. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Dawn. Excellent comments. And just a quick thought: if it ever makes sense for myself or someone from my team to come up to your area and present something to some of the school board people or the administrators or the health and school people, to kind of light a spark and get them thinking along these lines, you know, we're very open to doing that. So just mention that. And the other thing, just interestingly, I thought while you were talking there, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to unplug my headset, which I did, and I listened to you through my speaker on my laptop, and to be honest, Dawn, it was absolutely clear. It was every bit as clear as a headset. So anyways, yeah, I appreciate your challenges around funding and being able to do conference calls. And if I get any brainwaves around that area, I'll certainly let you know.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for your offer to come up this way. Sometimes we have public health people locally on, but we didn't today. The closest lady was from Revelstoke. So it's something for me, I bring it up when I talk to the guys. I tend to think of our school administrators as guys, but for sure I will keep hounding and nagging. Supposedly nagging works. So I'm going to click off here. Thanks so much.
Yes, right on, Dawn. Thanks a lot. Good working with you. Talk to you later.